It's the final edition of the ACC Big Ten Challenge, and the Tar Heels are traveling to Bloomington, Indiana to take on the Hoosiers looking to get back in the win column. What does North Carolina have to do to avoid a 3-game losing streak?
You are Locked On Tar Heels, your daily podcast on the UNC Tar Heels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, it's Wednesday, November 30th, 2022. Welcome into the Locked On Tar Heels podcast, the only daily North Carolina show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Shade, and joining me as he does every Wednesday is our guy, Coach Pac Kilby. We want to thank you for making Locked On Tar Heels your first listener watch every single day. Today's show is brought to you by Sling TV. Don't miss tonight's big ACC Big Ten matchup between the Tar Heels and Hoosiers on ESPN right there on Sling. Sling TV, the TV you love for a price you love. Try it today. So today, Coach Pac Kilby and I are going to get into some things. We're going to give you some big takeaways from the entire PKI tournament. And then we're going to get into some buy and sell at the end. There's been some trends, good and bad, so far this season. And we want to tell you what we're buying and selling. But first, we got to get you ready for the last ever ACC Big Ten matchup. This one will be between the North Carolina Tar Heels and the Indiana Hoosiers, the Hoosiers have won last 2 times these teams have played in the regular season, but both were inside Assembly Hall as this one will be. But then, of course, North Carolina won in the 2016 NCAA tournament on their way to the national championship game, and we just won't talk about what happened there. Pac Kilby, some potential good news, and this is where I want to start. It seemed like maybe Armando Bacot wasn't going to play in this game. On Tuesday, Coach Davis at his Zoom press conference said that everyone practiced and that Leaky Black, who rolled an ankle against Alabama, and Armando Bacot, who experienced shooting pains against Alabama, should be good to go. Great news for the Tar Heels, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, anytime you got a big-time matchup like this, you want to see the best players play. I mean, I think that goes without saying. But then, just for us and for what we do, obviously Armando is a huge, huge piece. And then Leaky too. I mean, Leaky is probably going to be tasked with guarding one of the best players in the country. And so we're going to get to see real early how healthy his ankle really is and if he's going to be able to be a full go. And to me, it's exciting just to know we're going to have our guys. And it's going to be the 4th game in a row on the road. And so it's going to be tough, but hopefully we're healthy and we're ready to go.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you bring up a potential good point there. Like, assuming Armando is able to play, as Coach Davis said he would be, at what percentage is he at? And, would he be guarding Trace Jackson Davis if healthy, who you just alluded to? And if he's not, do you put Leaky on him? Do you put Pete Nance on him? That's going to be an interesting defensive decision to watch. By the way, just really quick, let me interject. We've been keeping tabs as we're recording. We're watching the ACC Big Ten Challenge. Virginia just erased an 11-point halftime deficit, came back to beat Michigan in Ann Arbor. Could have been a foul called right at the end of the game on a Michigan 3 trying to win, but Virginia holds on to win by 2, still undefeated. And that means, folks, the much maligned ACC is up 5-3 in the Big Ten ACC Challenge and would just need 3 wins to clinch this bad boy on Wednesday evening. And part of that, obviously, is going to be this Tar Heels Hoosiers matchup, 9:15 Eastern time on ESPN in Assembly Hall. And so another question I kind of wonder about, Pac, is that Coach Davis said that everyone practiced and Leaky and Bacot should be good to go. When he says everyone, what I'm not clear on with that is we knew that Jalen Washington would be getting back into the lineup at some point after Portland. We just aren't sure when that's going to be. The team hasn't been very specific with that. And so when he says everyone, I'm curious to see, does he mean everyone or does he just mean everyone that's been playing? So we could see the glorious college debut of Jalen Washington tonight.
Boy, that would sure be nice. I think I would I would love to do that, love to see that. But, my question would be, is this the ideal game for him to make his debut? That's
exactly.
It's on the road against the top 10 team. That would be putting him in a tough spot. But nonetheless, if Coach Davis is confident enough in him and feels like he's ready to go and contribute, then I'd love to see him. Love to see what he can, what he can give to us. So going back to what you mentioned earlier with who might potentially be guarding Trace Jackson-Davis, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Carolina do it by committee and, use Leaky, use Mondo, use Pete Nance, and just try to keep fresh legs and length on him and see if we can't tire him out over the course of 40 minutes.
Dude, and that would be a really interesting thing to see. I mean, you think like, oh, I don't know if Leaky can guard him. He's this big forward. Listen, Trace Jackson-Davis is only 6'9", and so Leaky's right there with him at 6'9", right? And so he's not giving up any height to Trace Jackson-Davis. So I don't see, especially with Mondo, probably, I don't know what level of percent he is, but I think there's a lot of wisdom in that. And then maybe if you need to, as you said, Pete Nance's length could bother him some. I just think, as you're saying, you got to find ways to make Jackson-Davis uncomfortable in this game and really allow the Carolina defense to find some ways to bother what's happening there. Now, here's a question, Pac, that I have for you as a coach. This is a big national game on a big national stage. What people have essentially said is the crown jewel of this year's challenge. But at what percent would you play if you were coaching Armando Bacot? At what percent of health would you play him versus sitting him out with the long view of waiting on March? Not waiting to play him till March, but you hear my point of sure. March being more important.
Absolutely, yeah, I understand what you're getting at, and for me, I think a lot of this is dependent on what we've already done. And we lost Iowa State, and then we turned around and we lost again. And so to me, this is like a needed game because now we're starting to play for tournament seeding also. And so I think you got to look at it too, like, all right, obviously we have Nance now, and that provides some backup depth at the 5 spot. But is a 70% Bacot better than a 100% Will Shaver? The answer is yes.
Absolutely.
So, and this is a needed game. And so I would think if it was 70% or better, I would play him. If it's worse than that, I probably would just be really cautious with it. But like I said, we really need him to be a full go and get out there and get after it because we need this win badly.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And so obviously Doug Halverson and the rest of the medical staff will be in consultation with Armando and his family and Coach Davis and all that. And they're going to make a wise decision for him and for the team and for the team's future and his future. I'm not worried about that, but it's just always interesting to see. Now, here's part of the deal, Pac. I don't know what to make of IU, and here's why. They're ranked high everywhere. 10th in the AP poll, 10th at Bart Torvik, 10th at Evan Maya, 11th at KenPom, 6th at team rankings. They're probably lowest is their 24th at Haslametrics. But what makes it difficult for me to project what Indiana actually is, despite all those high rankings, is their schedule. They're 6-0. They played 6 games, beat Xavier, a nice road win, 81-79. They're 32nd at KenPom. That's a great win. But their other 5 games, are you ready for this, Pac? All of them, all the other 5 games are against teams ranked 255th or worse at KenPom out of 363 teams in the nation. In fact, if you look at their schedule, I mean, I think their non-conference strength of schedule right now is like 355th. Let me look back at, 355th non-conference strength of schedule right now. That is absolutely pitiful. Now, you contrast that, my friend, with the Tar Heels, who are the only team in the top 25 to have not played a sub-200 KenPom team right now. And so while the Tar Heels have taken a couple losses, you still got to go out and win the games. It's just hard to know what to make of Indiana because they haven't really done anything against anybody. They didn't play an MTE last week during Feast Week, and so it's really kind of What do you think about that?
Yeah, for sure. I don't think we've obviously Xavier has proven to be a worthy opponent, and that was like you mentioned, a really good win for them on the road. But for us, as for scouting and for knowing exactly what we're going to see, I think that's still a question mark. It's still up in the air, just because they haven't seen consistent good competition quite like we have, and so they're going to get a taste of it tonight, and it's going to be awesome to see how Indiana plays. Obviously it's in Assembly Hall, so they're going to be in their comfort zone, in their gym with their fans.
Yep.
But they will not
electric atmosphere. It's going to be a great atmosphere.
Absolutely, but they will not have seen the talent they're going to see until Carolina walks on the floor. I mean, that's going to be something new for them. So I hope that is something that plays in our favor.
And yeah, so that's going to be interesting to watch, Pac, is how quickly is Indiana ready to get up to speed based on what the Tar Heels are bringing with, obviously, this highest level of talent that the Hoosiers will have seen all year. Obviously, that home court advantage is going to be massive in Assembly Hall. Two kind of things I'm watching for is what kind of hangover do the Tar Heels have in terms of like physical hangover, emotional hangover, mental hangover from the PKI trip. They went straight to Bloomington. Not only did they play the tournament, the last game of it was 4 overtimes with lots of guys, or a few guys playing lots of minutes. So I'm going to be watching for that. How are Carolina's legs late in the second half? And then also because of those results in Portland, you got a lot of game pressure on yourself now. You feel less like you were saying, you kind of feel like you have to win this game now because of losing to Iowa State and Alabama. And so I feel like there's pressure to really go into Bloomington and do this against what's a really balanced team. Indiana is 14th in offensive efficiency, 12th in defensive efficiency at KenPom. And so, man, Tar Heels got a lot of hard work cut out for themselves tonight. So then, Pac, my question is, what's your gut on this? Is this a get-right game? Is this a bounce-back game? Do the Tar Heels head home as winners? IU is favored in this. The last I saw, -6.5 points.
If a Hubert Davis coach team has taught me anything, it's that they play best when their back is against the wall. I'm taking the Tar Heels by 8.
By 8, so to win and to cover. I'm going to say that the Tar Heels bring it. They win, but do not cover. I think it's going to be a really close game. Not like a buzzer beater kind of thing, but like one of those like 2 possession victories kind of type thing where they hit their free throws, which this team is thankfully great at. Going to be a lot of fun to watch. Well, we do want to go back and give you some big picture takeaways from the Phil Knight Invitational. We haven't had Coach Kilby on since then, and I want you to be able to hear his thoughts on what Carolina was doing or not doing in Portland. But before we do that, I need to tell you all about Bet Online. Bet Online is your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. So get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there. From football to basketball, soccer, and esports, they've got it all at betonline.net. And if you love sports podcasts, you can find those there as well. It's always the fastest and easiest way to get your sports betting fix. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about all the trends in action. Bet Online, where the game starts. So, Pat, Carolina obviously beat Portland. At the time, it seems like, it's a close win against a not great Portland team. They had a great showing, Portland did, in this invitational. But then Carolina loses 2, frankly, winnable games against Iowa State and against Alabama. Alabama game aside, Pac, where I want to start with this is the more frustrating loss to me, or the more not great loss, is Iowa State. What do you think?
Yeah, it's a really frustrating loss. And, you and I had kind of talked about it. Iowa State just kind of uglied the game up.
Right.
They were switching defenses between zone and man, and they were real physical, and just I felt like they fouled just almost every other time down the court, almost so much so that the refs were like, okay, we can't call everything.
That's
so
right. It's like
the stuff.
I thought of it like a defensive secondary in football that's like, oh, you can't call DPI on us on every pass, right? It felt like that type of thing to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it was an ugly game. It was an ugly loss. Did not think we played well. Our offensive flow was not there. And so to me, it was one of those ones where I was hoping it would be like okay, that was an ugly loss. Let's move on from that and respond against Alabama. And we just didn't quite do that either.
Right. And I felt like they responded. I felt like if Carolina had played with the energy against Iowa State that they played with against Alabama, they win that game by double digits. Is that a fair statement?
Absolutely, yeah. They responded with effort. They did not respond with execution.
Yes,
probably the best
bingo.
way.
That's the way to put it. Yes, absolutely. So, Pac, I want to take you into the coach's corner and ask you two coaches questions. One of the big takeaways for me from the Alabama game specifically was the lack of end-of-game execution, both down the stretch of regulation and in the overtimes, perhaps most highlighted by what happened at the end of the first overtime when Carolina has the ball, can run out the shot clock and game clock, essentially. I think there's like a 1 second differential. But Caleb Love stands out top dribbling. The other four guys are down on the baseline. Basically, no play is run. He can't get around the corner, so takes a step back. Three questions. Is that on Caleb for not running what was drawn up? Is that on Coach Davis for not drawing something up? Is it on some of the other players for not doing their part to execute the play? What is your take on that?
To me, that's on all three of them. I think Coach Davis, there was not just the first overtime, but even in regulation and then towards the end of multiple overtimes, I felt like what we had drawn up or what we didn't have drawn up, I guess, was a question mark for me because it felt like it was a lot of Caleb, okay, go do your thing, go try to create something and hit a shot. And that just wasn't working. It hadn't been working all day. I mean, he was like 12 of 32 going into overtime, I think, which was, beyond me. I don't know why, he was shooting that many shots when the ball wasn't going through the net, but I'll move on. I think that so that was a thing. And then, sometimes I think, I don't want to call it pure selfishness, but sometimes I think Caleb gets in this world where I think he thinks he has to put the cape on and do it all.
Yep.
And he needs to realize that he has RJ Davis and, Armando Bacot and Leaky Black and all these guys around him that are really good players in their own right. And when we had all of our success, in that major run down the stretch last year, it was because those guys were one cohesive unit. They were playing together. They were sharing the ball, and they were tough to guard. And right now, we're a bunch of individuals on the court offensively. And that has to change for us to be successful, in my opinion.
Man, that's good. That's so helpful. Thank you. I always think it's helpful to give watchers and listeners an opportunity to see it through the eyes of a coach of like, how would this be going? One other coach's corner question for you. We've talked a lot about how important it's been for this team to get Puff Johnson back. And man, particularly he played 48 minutes against Alabama. So thankfully, I think it looks like he's good from a health standpoint. But we talk about that Puff Johnson adds so much, but a lot of times it's stuff that doesn't show up in the box score, although he kind of had a little bit of a stat stuffing day against Alabama. And so as to help people know, like, okay, if I can't see his effect on the game through the box score, what can I be watching for as a fan of Carolina basketball to see what Puff Johnson is adding to this team?
Yeah, two things, right off the bat is just when he's on defense, watch his on ball and watch his off-ball defense. When he's on the ball, man, he does a great job of just keeping the ball in front of him and forcing opponents to shoot over him. And when he's off the ball, man, he knows how to slide into the right spot and take a charge, or at least attempt to take a charge.
That's right.
He has a great feel for it. And those types of things like charges, we call those slam dunks on defense, right? It's an energy for your team. The bench gets involved. It's a key play, and he does a great job of that. But then you flip over to the offensive end. And let me tell you, one thing that goes underrated with Puff is he has a knack for getting to the free throw line. He finds ways to get fouled. And when he gets there, he hits his free throws most of the time. Good free throw shooter. He's a sneaky rebounder. His length and his athleticism, he rebounds the ball well. A good passer, unselfish. And maybe my favorite thing about him, if you watch him off the ball, he sets the hardest screens of anybody on our team. It's not Armando. It's not Nance. It's not any of those guys. It's Puff. He sprints. He sets tough screens. And it's just those little things, like you said, they don't show up on the box score, but they make a huge, huge difference. And I think this is just the coach in me, so I'll get off on a little tangent here. But when you do those little things well, the game will reward that. And you see a lot of times Puff, like, man, he finds just like the craziest, weirdest ways to get points on the board or get to the free throw line. And I think that's the game's way of honoring just, him kind of doing the little things right. And he does. He does that consistently for us. And he's a huge, huge piece that we are very fortunate to have back.
Man, that's good. That's such helpful insight, and I hope it's really beneficial to people. So watch those things tonight as you're watching the Tar Heels play Indiana. Watch for Puff Johnson doing all these things, getting on loose balls, all of those things. Pac, I know we need to keep moving on, so I just want to run quickly through a couple what I've called head scratchers and a couple, hey, I don't want it to be all bad, so what are some positive things? And then I'll just see if maybe there's one or two of them you want to respond to. I'm going to run through 3 quick head scratchers. Number 1, for everything great Leaky Black has done, one of the things he's not doing well that he usually does is assists. In 4 of Carolina's 7 games, Leaky has tallied 0 assists. That's unleaky Black-like. Interesting there. Armando Bacot, head scratcher number 2, has at least 2 turnovers in every game this season, including at least 4 turnovers in all 3 Phil Knight Invitational games. And then the third head scratcher for me is team-wide assists, not just Leaky. The team has had assisted on 54% of their made field goals or less in every game this season. Last year, they averaged assisting on 54% of their field goals for the entirety of the season. So clearly, I think that is a statistical way of showing what we're talking about with the stagnation of the ball, with Caleb and others just freelance. It's not just on Caleb. I shouldn't use only him, but there's just so much stagnation. What I need to see is what we saw in that first possession out of halftime against Alabama. That was the best ball movement I saw all game. A couple quick positives, and then we'll get Pac's reaction to maybe 1 or 2 of these. Is the free throw shooting as a team. It has stayed at a high level, even though we're not getting great shooting out of the backcourt right now. The team was 18 for 20 against Alabama. They're shooting as a team a dead even 75% on the season, just slightly behind where they were last year. But last year was the second best team free throw percentage in school history. Love that. And then the final thing is, early in the season, we're still early. At the very beginning of the season, there were rebounding woes. The Tar Heels got out-rebounded by the first couple teams, but now has been rebounding better. They ended up losing the rebounding battle to Bama by 4, 58-54. But at the end of regulation, the Tar Heels led 39-38. And that might not seem like much, but right now, Alabama is the number 1 rebounding team in the nation in terms of total rebounds per game. And so that's right where you want to be, on par with that. Now, oftentimes it's the Tar Heels as the number 1 rebounding team in the nation. That's where we got to get back to. Pac, any of that you want to dwell on a little bit longer?
Yeah, I do want to go back and focus on one of the negatives real quick.
Okay.
I just want to talk about Bacot. He's averaging at least 2 turnovers per game. And one of the things that's changed this year is we've started incorporating our post players having the ball at the top of the key and running some handoffs. So anytime we pull our posts away from the basket and we're, putting the ball in their hands that far away, we run that risk. And I think that's something that stood out, as maybe that's a little outside of Armando's comfort zone. Or
particularly in the Iowa State game was where it most reared its ugly head.
Yeah, I think he had 3 turnovers in a row, if I remember that correctly. Yeah.
In the midst of it was in the midst of Iowa State when they came back to take the lead and never relinquish it again. And unfortunately, that was right when Pete Nance went out, when he jammed his finger again. And so it was I think he made his first turnover, but it was literally 3 straight Carolina possessions, 3 Armando turnovers. Yikes. Yeah.
Keep going. And you run that risk when, that's the worst part about that, bringing your post out for those handoffs and things like that, is you run the risk of turnovers, and we've seen it rear its head, here early in the season. So hopefully that's something that we see improve over time.
I hope so. Thanks for sharing that. And I think a lot of that, frankly, is something Pete Nance is going to be just naturally better at than Armando. It's just he's been in and out at that point with some injury, and then against Alabama with foul trouble. But I feel comfortable with Nance operating with the ball out of that high post situation there. Well, friends, there are some really interesting trends for the Tar Heels this early season. Some of them good, some of them bad, as we've just alluded to. The question Pac Kilby and I want to ask is, are you buying those or are you selling on them? So we've got 4 of these that I want to ask us. Number 1, buying or selling, Pac. Hubert Davis will eventually, at some point this season, make good on the promise to utilize his depth more than last year.
I wish I could say I was buying this, but at this point, I'm selling it.
Sell it down the river. Get out of here. Yeah,
he just has not proven to me that he's willing to play him. And I think when Jalen gets healthy, we'll see Puff, we'll see Seth Trimble, and we'll see Jalen.
Yep.
And I think that will be the extent of it.
You think his time will go down at that point?
I don't know. I bounce back and forth on that. I think maybe depending on games and matchups.
Yeah, that's good.
For the most part, I think that his minutes do kind of tighten up and shrink up just because Hubert has just shown almost a stubbornness to use the bench. But I also understand because he used them some against Iowa State and they squandered a lead. So that's, maybe there's some untrustworthiness there going on between him and the bench. I don't know, but I'm selling. What about you?
I'm selling too. And I think I've said it all week on the show, and I'll say it again. I don't care how you use your bench. I think the weird thing to me is talking about doing it and then not. Does that make sense? Like, you're the head coach of the North Carolina Tar Heels. You do whatever you want to do. But I just think it's almost like he felt like he had to say he was going to use it more and then is not. And so that's the thing for me. But yeah, I'm selling. And again, you do what you want to do. You know how to run this team and what's going to work and not. How to develop, how not to develop, and all that. But we'll see how it continues to unfold. As you said, I think we'll have a better and more firm season-long idea about that once we see Jalen Washington worked into the rotation. Number 2, buying or selling. Leaky Black has been Carolina's most consistent, I didn't say best, I said most consistent player so far this season.
I'm buying. Y'all know I love Leaky, and man, has he been good this season. Defensively, been just phenomenal, like always. And then he's improved so much on the offensive end, almost like I'm starting to wonder if he needs to look to score a little bit more. He's just been efficient. I think overall, I could be wrong, and you may know, Isaac.
I'm looking at the stats right now. Say it one more time.
I think he's 50% from the field on the season.
On the season, 53.5% and 41.2% from 3. Now, only 17 attempts, but still.
That's light years better than where he's been, and it's good enough that defenses have to honor him.
That's right. And I think that you absolutely, Pac. That's the thing. I don't need him to have a high volume and do it a ton, but I need him to be good enough to have to be honored by defenses to pull if people are sagging off of him and Mondo can't operate or doubling up on a drive or whatever it may be, I think you just hit the nail on the head. Bingo. I'm with you. I'm buying this. Leaky has been so consistent on both sides of the floor, and I can't imagine it happening to a better guy who's put his blood, sweat, and tears into this whole thing. Buying or selling, number 3, Armando Bacot will eventually get right and become the ACC Player of the Year.
Man, this is a tough one. I kind of went back and forth on this one, but I'm buying.
Okay.
I think that the ACC is a little bit down, comparatively speaking, this year, and I don't know that there's anybody in the conference or any team that's just well-positioned to stop him or keep him off the glass and keep him from getting his around the rim. And so I'm gonna go ahead and say I'm buying.
Okay.
But I do need to start to see some steady improvement from him, especially when it comes to knocking down free throws. He's been the one that's kind of been inconsistent, but I'm buying. I think he gets right.
Okay, yeah, he's in free throws. He's actually like 67.2% right now, like 0.2% higher than last year, which was his highest. But it's still like I need Bacot at 70. I'm with you. That's where you need to get to help this team. He is. I looked back. He is even. I think the problem for me is I was thinking about this earlier today. Let me say it this way: because of the ridiculousness of last year, I have been discounting what Armando has done the beginning of this season. So I was like, let me just look comparatively at his numbers to the rest of the ACC. This dude is still leading the conference in rebounding, averaging 11.3 a game. There's only two other dudes in the conference averaging double-digit rebounds a game, and both of those are under 11. In terms of points, he's not quite as high. He is 8th. But he's above like Terquavion Smith at NC State. And so Caleb leads the conference in scoring at 20. And but Armando, for starting off quote unquote bad by his standards, he's still 8th in the conference in scoring and 1st in rebounding. And so I think there's just this way in which Carolina has to realize the need to function through him better. Reference the 6 shot attempts against Iowa State, which is not just about the guards getting him the ball. He has to make himself more available. But I think Carolina realizes their need to operate more through him in the post, the low post, not the high post, as you talked about earlier. And I think that gets him back up to those kind of numbers we expect to see. And obviously the caveat here is that he's healthy, right? We're going to have to wait and see on that. But I was planning to sell on this, but once I looked at those numbers comparatively to other ACC guys, I'm buying it. I'm buying it. And I think some of them, frankly, are makeup votes for last year when people are like, I should have voted for Armando last year. Yeah. All right. Our last buy and sell, number 4. Either Caleb Love or RJ Davis will get to 40% on 3-point shooting by the end of the season. As reference, both are currently under 30.
I'm buying, and I'll just go ahead and tell you, I think it's going to be RJ Davis.
Okay.
I think he's going to get there. I think he's way too capable of a shooter to not get there. We know Caleb is Caleb, right? He can get hot in a hurry. He can also get cold in a hurry.
He can.
And I think he kind of rides those waves. So I think Caleb finishes somewhere around 35%. I think RJ becomes our consistent 3-point threat. And I think the offense will become less and less individualized and more cohesive over time, which is going to mean he gets the right shots, and then he's going to capitalize on those. So I'm buying.
Okay. I think I'm going to sell on this one. I looked at his numbers and just did some like what if kind of math. He's 10 for 36 right now. If he had made 5 more of those, he would be over 40%. But I think he's not, if we're sticking at 40%, I'm going to say he doesn't get there, but I think he's in that 35 to 40 range. So I think it's like a good thing, but I don't think he gets to 40. But interestingly enough, both Pete Nance and Leaky are above 40% right now. And I'm going to say that at least one of them will stay above 40%. And I'm going to go with Pete Nance on that one. I think Leaky will cool off some, be high 30s, but I think Pete Nance is the guy that will just keep that height up above 40% for this season. Everybody tuning in, we want to know, are you buying or selling on these? Give us your answers as well. Pac, I cannot wait for this game tonight. Can't wait to see what the Tar Heels can do to get back after it, and then turning right back around and heading up to Blacksburg on Sunday to kick off ACC play. Big stuff there. For those of you watching our guy Pac, he's got his Christmas tree going in the background. If you're listening, you need to tune in and see it. My friend, tomorrow is December. It's the best time of the year. Happy December beginning to you almost.
Same to you, man. Same to you.
Yes, I love it. Well, friends, that is it for today's episode of Locked on Tar Heels. Hey, going to have a postcast after the game tonight live on YouTube. It's going to be a late one, but come in and join me if you want to. Pac, if you're still up, you want to hop in, would love to have you as well. Coming up on tomorrow's show, we're going to recap this Indiana game, of course, and a little preview on Friday. We're going to have linebacker Cedric Gray joining the show, who just got newly minted as a first-team All-ACC selection. You can follow the show on Twitter at Locked on Heels. Follow Pac at Coach_K23. You can follow me at Isaac Shade. Thanks for making Locked On Tar Heels your first listen. And next, we want you to check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast. It's the biggest stories of the day, instant reactions, big game recaps, and of course, the take of the day. It's available on Odyssey, YouTube, and anywhere else you get podcasts. Also, don't forget to subscribe, smash that like button, and leave some comments. We really appreciate you hanging out with us on a Wednesday, getting ready for this Carolina-Indiana game. Can't wait to see it tonight. Oh, folks, regardless of the outcome, it's always a great day to be a Tar Heel. Isn't that right, Pac Kilby? Until tomorrow, peace.